Hello everyone. Today our topic is the rise of nationalism in Europe, class 10th, Social Science, History, Chapter 1. Before starting, I would like to request that please subscribe my channel and watch my previous videos. So let's start with our today's topic. The topic is the rise of nationalism in Europe. Now, when we talk about rise of nationalism in Europe, what we are basically trying to talk about? We are talking about a particular region of the world and how the nationalism started in that particular region, where the different fragmented states were in existence, but now we find it out the nationalist nations are in existence. Now, what the nation or a state is. You see, a large number of people of mainly common descent or language or history inhabiting a territory bounded by defined limits and forming a society under one government is called a nation. Now, here we see a picture is there, a picture that is made by Frederic Sorrieu. And in this particular picture, he is trying to depict many of the things. And with the help of that, we can understand what in 1848 and so on, the people thought of the nation and how the nation state can evolve.
अब रुकेगा नहीं.
Now, the picture that we have seen just in the slide that has just gone by, in that Frederic Sorrieu and what the nation or a state is. You see, a large number of people of mainly common descent or language or history inhabiting a territory bounded by defined limits and forming a society under one government is called a nation. Now, here we see a picture is there, a picture that is made by Frederic Sorrieu. And in this particular picture, he is trying to depict many of the things. And with the help of that, we can understand what in 1848 and so on, the people thought of the nation and how the nation state can evolve. Now, the picture that we have seen just in the slide that has just gone by, in that Frederic Sorrieu and what he visualized about the nation state is talked about. He made 4 pictures. Here we can see in 1848, Frederic Sorrieu, a French artist, prepared a series of 4 prints, visualizing his dream of a world made up of democratic and social republic, as he called them. The first print shows the people of Europe and America marching in a long train and offering homage to the Statue of Liberty. As they pass by it, a female figure carries a torch of enlightenment in one hand and the Charter of the Right of Man in the other hand. On the earth lies the shattered remains of the symbols of absolutist institutions. In Sorrieu's utopian version, the people of the world are grouped as distinct nations, identified through their flags and national customs. Leading the procession are USA and Switzerland, followed by France and Germany, following Germany and Austria, Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, Lombardy, Poland, England, Ireland, Hungary, and Russia. From the heavens above, Christ, saints, and angels gaze at the scene. The artist symbolizes the fraternity among the nation of the state or the world. Now you see, what we are talking here is just the slide that was just before it, where we were talking about the nation or the state. You can look at the picture here. In this particular picture, about which we have just talked in the slide, that there the Statue of Liberty is there with a torch in her hand. USA and Switzerland had just crossed to the right of the statue. I'm not talking about my own right, but I'm talking about the right of the statue. Rest other nations of Europe and America, they are following. That means they are just coming by and they are going to become a nation state. Just above, we find it out the Christ As the Frederic Sorrieu was a Christian, he made a picture in which he was depicting Christ and his angels. Here we can talk about that leading the procession are the US and Switzerland, followed by the France. The next just in front of Statue of Liberty is France, then the Germany, following Germany, Austria, then Kingdom of Two Sicily. We can identify these nations. How we can identify? We can identify with the help of the flag that the people are holding and their traditional dress. That Kingdom of Two Sicilies, then Lombardy, Poland, England, Ireland, Hungary, and Russia are coming through. This is what the Frederic Sorrieu visualized in 1848, at the time when even Germany was not known as Germany, but it was Prussia, and similarly Austria was even not as a nation. It was a collection of many other nations that we will see in our next slides. The French Revolution and the idea of nation. The French Revolution that happened, there again the ideology of nationalism was there, and because of the growth of nationalism in France, that French Revolution started. Introduction of various measures and practices created sense of collective identity among the people of France. Change of monarchy and establishment of a republic, creation of new assembly, then rise of Napoleon and his reforms. Revolutionaries help other people of Europe to become nation. Now, French Revolution happened, and because of that French Revolution, the impact of French Revolution, it was said, and even today it is said, that if France sneezes, rest of the Europe catches cold. Many times we have seen this phrase to be used in examination and asked what it means. It was said by Metternich that if France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. The ideology was about the French Revolution, that happened. After that, the nationalism that evolved there in France was literally or later on spread all over Europe. We find that the monarchies that were ended and so on, the republics that were created. Similarly, because of rise of Napoleon and his reform, that Napoleonic Code that we have already studied in class 9th, because of that also, and in this year also we will study that because of that also many other nations of Europe, they felt that they can also become the nation state. The people, the revolutionaries, the Young Italy movement that was there, and then the Young Europe movement and other organizations that came after establishment of Young Europe, was also the reason of coming up of nation state in Europe. Now you see in the very early part, the size of Russia, then the German Confederation, then revolt sites were there where the revolt happened, then Spain, you can see also Portugal, Great Britain, Ireland, Scotland, Austria and Hungary. You can see the Ottoman Empire is also there, and such a large size of it. Later on we find it out what happened. We have already seen the map of 1830 of Europe, the making of nationalism in Europe. Germany, Italy and Switzerland were divided into kingdom, duchies and cantons. These divisions were having their autonomous rulers. There were different languages that were used in the same country, like Germany. Earlier it was known as Prussia. Then rise of middle class was there because of more industrialization, more trade and so on. Because of that, the new middle class that came. Then industrialization in England and emergence of working class and liberalism was there. New conservation after 1815, that means after the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte, and the people, those who won the war of Waterloo in 1815, they tried their best to preserve the traditional institutions that were there before Napoleon Bonaparte. After the defeat of Napoleon, the European government followed the spirit of conservatism. Conservative regime were autocratic revolutionaries at that time, fought for liberty and freedom. For example, Mazzini's Young Italy and Young Europe was there that fought with the conservative regime, and their autocratic rule. And ultimately, the revolutionaries, they tried their best to change those conservative ideology and to convert that one in liberty, in freedom, in equality, in democracy, and so on. The aristocracy and the new middle class. The aristocracy was the dominant class on the continent. Basically, we are talking here about the European continent, politically and socially. The majority of the population was made up of the peasantry, the peasants and artisans. Industrialization began in England in the second half of the 18th century. New social group came into being, a working class. Population and middle class is made up of industrialists, businessmen, and professionals. They also came there. That means a new social group was evolved with the working class and industrialists, businessmen, and many other professionals that were there. Now, the next question that arises, what did liberal nationalism stand for? Now, there are many other words like nationalism, liberal nationalism, and aggressive nationalism. But here we are discussing about the liberal nationalism. The term liberalism derived from the Latin root liber, meaning free. The right to vote and to get elected was granted exclusively to property-owning men. Men without property and all women were excluded from political rights. In 1834, a customs union or Zollverein was formed at the initiative of Prussia and joined by most of the German states. That means nearly 37 of the German states that they joined. The union abolished. That means we are here talking about the Prussia and the German states and the rest of the German states, or the custom union made by these German states and Prussia. They abolished tariff barrier and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to TWO2 only. That means earlier it was nearly 36 currencies that were running within that particular area. Now all these currencies were abolished, and we find later on that only 2 currencies were there, and that also after a few time we find it out only 1 currency was there. And ultimately, after the unification of Prussia, the whole lot of German states were dissolved in one country, and that is known to be the German Confederation or German states. Now, a new conservatism after 1815. In 1815, European governments were driven by a spirit of conservatism. Conservatives believed in monarchy, the church, social hierarchy, property, and that the family should be preserved. A modern army, an efficient bureaucracy, a dynamic economy, the abolition of feudalism and serfdom could strengthen the autocratic monarchy of Europe. Now, these are the thinking of conservatism after the defeat of Napoleon. When Napoleon was defeated, he was thought of as the new ideology because he was leading the France. But once he was defeated, the rest of the European governments, they were driven by the spirit of conservative ideology. That means conservatives believe in monarchy, the church, social hierarchy, property, and the family should be preserved. Modern army, an efficient bureaucracy, a dynamic economy, the abolition of feudalism and serfdom could strengthen the autocratic monarchy of Europe. Now, it wasn't like that the conservatives, they are going to accept everything that was of before Napoleon Bonaparte. No, they were of the ideology that monarchy, church, social hierarchy, property, and the family should be preserved. But they were also of having this ideology, the new modern ideology, that the modern army, efficient bureaucracy, dynamic economy, feudal lords, and serfdom must be abolished so that the autocratic monarchies, they must strengthen their power in their own country. In 1815, representatives of the European power, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria met in Vienna to draw up a settlement for Europe. The Bourbon dynasty was restored to power and France lost the territories it had annexed under Napoleon. The Revolutionaries. In 1815, secret societies were formed in many European states to train revolutionaries and spread their ideas. Revolutionary opposed monarchical form of government, fight for liberty and freedom. The Italian revolutionary Giuseppe Mazzini, born in Geneva in 1807, founded two more underground societies. First, Young Italy in Marseilles in 1831. Secondly, he founded Young Europe in Bern in 1834, whose members were like-minded young men from Poland, France, Italy, and the German states, and later many organizations on the basis of it were created in different nations of Poland, France, Italy, Germany, and so on. The Age of Revolution, 1830 to 1848. In July 1830, Bourbon kings were overthrown by liberal revolutionaries who installed a constitutional monarchy with Louis Philippe at its head. The July Revolution sparked an uprising in Brussels which led to Belgium breaking away from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands in 1821. Greeks struggled for their independence from Ottoman Empire. The romantic imagination and national feeling, culture played an important role in creating the idea of the nation. Art and poetry, stories and music helped express and shape nationalist feeling. Romanticism, a cultural movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiment. Language also played an important role in developing nationalist sentiment. Russian language is imposed everywhere, and in 1831, an armed rebellion against Russian rule took place, which was ultimately crushed. We are here talking about Poland. Poland was captured by Russia, and the Russian language was imposed everywhere. And ultimately, when the people, they started revolting against the occupation of Russia, then the Russian army get into action and they killed many of the people. But even in church, the Russian was not spoken, but it was the Polish language that was spoken. That means the language was an important position that played a role for the people, for their nationalist sentiments. Then again we come here, Hunger, Hardship, and Popular Revolt. It's a part there in your book where it is seen. Europe faced economic hardship in 1830s. The first half of the 19th century saw an enormous increase in population all over Europe. The rise of food prices or a year of bad harvest led to widespread pauperism in town and country. In 1848, food shortages and widespread unemployment brought the population of Paris out on the roads. The Revolution of the Liberals. In 1848, once the people, they started feeling the pain of not being able to get food, then they started a revolution. A revolution led by the educated middle classes were underway. Men and women of the liberal middle class demanded creation of nation state on parliamentary principles. A constitution, freedom of press, freedom of association. A large number of political associations came together in Frankfurt to vote for an all-German National Assembly. On 18 May 1848, 831 elected representatives marched to take their places in the Frankfurt Parliament, convened in the Church of St. Paul. The constitution drafted for German nation was headed by a monarchy. Subject to a parliament, the crown was offered to Frederic Wilhelm IV, King of Prussia, but he rejected it and joined other monarchs to oppose the elected assembly. The middle class dominated the parliament and a large number of women participated in liberal movement. Women formed their own political associations, founded newspaper and took part in political meetings and demonstrations, but they were still denied suffrage rights during the election of the assembly. In the years after 1848, the autocratic monarchies of Central and Eastern Europe began to introduce the changes that had already taken place in Western Europe before 1815. Thus, serfdom and bonded labor were abolished both in Habsburg dominions and in Russia. Now comes the unification of Italy. Giuseppe Mazzini had played an important role in the unification of Italy. He formed a secret society called Young Italy in Marseilles. To spread his goals, he believed Italy could not continue to be a patchwork of small states and had to be forced into a single unified republic. During 1830s, Mazzini sought to put together a coherent program for a unitary Italian republic. As uprisings in 1831 and 1848 had failed, the mantle now fell on Sardinia, Piedmont, under its ruler Emmanuel II, to unify Italy. Under Chief Minister Cavour, Sardinia Piedmont succeeded in destroying the Austrian forces in 1859. Even Garibaldi joined the fray. In 1860, they marched into South Italy and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and with the help of the local peasants, drove out the Spanish ruler. In 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed as King of Unified Italy or United Italy. All of it is there. Italy by 1829, that was the initial stage, and how that later on the Italy just ended. In this presentation you can see. You see on the right of it, top, everything is continuously going on. Then 2nd September 1860, 3rd September 1860, then 7th September, Naples was liberated. And you can see continuously the map, how map is changing. Now 1866, and ultimately the Papal State was annexed by Italy, and 3rd February Rome became the capital of Italy. Now, before and after the Italian unification, you can see in this map also Italian states in 1858, then in between 1859 to 1878, we have already seen in earlier picture also how the annexation of rest of the states were completed and unification of Italy was done. Then comes the unification of Germany. In 18th century, Germany was divided into a number of states. Some of these states ceased to exist during the Napoleonic Wars. At the end of the war, there were still 39 independent states in Germany. Prussia was most powerful and dominated by big landlords known as Junkers. Nationalist feelings were widespread among middle-class Germans who had tried to unite the different regions of the German Federation into a nation-state governed by an elected parliament. In May 1848, a large number of political associations came together to vote for an all-German National Assembly. The representatives met at Frankfurt, and the Frankfurt Assembly proposed the unification of Germany as a constitutional monarchy under the King of Prussia as emperor. Then the King of Prussia rejected the offer, and the liberal initiative of nation building was repressed by the combined forces of the monarchy, the military, and the Junkers. Then on Prussia, under its chief minister Otto von Bismarck, led the movement for unification of Germany. Bismarck carried out this process with the help of the Prussian army and the bureaucracy. He fought 3 wars over 7 years with Denmark, then Austria, and at last with France. Prussia was victorious in all these wars, and process of unification was completed as a result of Prussia's victory over France. Consequently, on 18 January 1871, an assembly comprising of Prince of German states, representative of the army, important Prussian ministers, and Bismarck gathered in the palace of Versailles and proclaimed the Prussian King Kaiser William the new German emperor. You see, this is what the Germany was initially. 1866, the green one is the Kingdom of Prussia, and the yellow is 1871 till 1918, the German Empire that came in. The next one is the strange case of Britain. The model of the nation or the nation state, some scholars have argued, is Great Britain. It was the result of a long drawn out process. There was no British nation prior to the 18th century. United Kingdom of the Great Britain meant, and in effect, that England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. The British Parliament was henceforth dominated by its English members. Ireland was forcibly incorporated into United Kingdom in 1801, and British flag, the national anthem, the English language were actively promoted, and the older nations survived only as subordinate partners on this union. You see, this is the political map of Britain. The yellow one is of the England, and the pink one is the Wales, then on the top of it, the Scotland. The green one is the Republic of Ireland, and on the top of it, you see Northern Ireland is there. These all are the different parts of United Kingdom or the Britain. Now what we find it out. Visualizing the nation. Marine and Germania were both female allegories used by artists in the 19th century to represent the nation. Marine for France and Germania for Germany. In France, he was named as Marine, a popular Christian name which underlined the idea of people's nation. Her characteristics were drawn from those of liberty and republic. The red cap, the tricolor, the cockade, statue of Marine were erected in public squares and as a national symbol of unity. Marine images were marked on coins and stamps. Instead of just having the idea of fatherland, they wanted to implant a suitable image in the minds of the people. They invariably choose the mother figure symbolizing nations, Britannia, Germania, Marine, reminding us of our concept of Matribhumi. Germania became the allegory of the German nation. Germania wears a crown of oak leaves as German oak stands for heroism. It was hung from the ceiling of St. Paul's Church, where Frankfurt Parliament was convened to symbolize the liberal revolution. You see here, a coin is there of France, where Marine is there, and on the right side, we see the Germania holding a sword, a tricolor, a cockade, and so on, standing there for bravery, liberty, and the German nation, and so on. The Napoleonic Code. The first major changes was doing away with all privileges based on birth, establishing equality before law and securing the right to property. In 1804, Napoleon, after becoming the Emperor of France, he introduced a way of working. Administrative changes were there, and these are known as Napoleonic Code of 1804. The first major change was doing away with all privileges based on birth, establishing equality before law and securing the right to property. Administrative divisions were simplified, feudal system was abolished, and peasants were freed from serfdom and manorial dues. Abuse of manorial landlords, everything was just taken away. In towns, guild restrictions were removed, transport and communication system were improved. Peasants, artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed a newfound freedom. Businessmen and small-scale producers of goods in particular began to realize that uniform laws, standardized weights and measures, and a common national currency would facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital from one region to another. Then comes the nationalism and imperialism. Last quarter of the 19th century, nationalism became a narrow creed with limited aims. Intolerance, Balkans became the sense of big power rivalry. Nationalism aligned with imperialism caused of World War I. Idea of nationalism was now same everywhere, but concept of national state was accepted universally. That means nationalism was everywhere, but the national state, now it started to become a universal reality. And now we are at the end of the slide, and in this particular chapter we try to understand how the nationalist ideology and nation state both came in this world. So therefore we are at the end of the chapter. We will meet again in some new chapter. For the time period, goodbye all of you. Thank you for watching. We will meet in my next video again. Please subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon to get notified my next video. And if you have any doubt, you all can ask me in my comment section. Once again, thank you all of you for watching. Thanks. Have a nice day. Bye all of you. Good day.